Running at sunrise has always been something I am fond of. The calming tranquility of the village, only disturbed by the steady beat of my walking, had a healing effect. However, there was a difference on that specific morning. Thick fog enveloped my village, flanked by dense forests and towering mountains. The homes on the street appeared more peaceful than usual, all in a row. The atmosphere was thick and stifling. I strolled through the main plaza and noticed that there was no activity taking place. The empty wooden seats stood out against the usual noise of the old church clock chiming every hour. I stopped, confused, and suddenly realized that something was amiss. As I kept running, the air grew heavier as I approached the edge of the forest. I stopped to inhale, and that's when I first noticed it. A soft, subdued noise coming from the leaves. I paid close attention, trying to understand its significance. I chose to track down the noise in the woods. The sun's rays struggled to filter through the dense forest canopy. The call persisted, now more audible, yet still impossible to understand. I felt a shiver go down my back, and every hair on my body stood up. I was definitely being watched by something or someone. As I advanced on the narrow trail, I felt my heart race while staying alert for any signs of activity. After that, I caught sight of it. In the midst of the trees, a blurry silhouette remains motionless, observing me. I stood still, fear immobilizing me. The figure remained still. After blinking, I glanced back and noticed that there was now nothing present. Feeling my heart race, I started making my way back to the village, only to find that the path looked unfamiliar. The dense trees enveloped me, turning the once familiar surroundings into a suffocating maze. The phone call came back, sounding even louder now, as if a chilling cry for assistance reverberating among the trees. Feeling my heart race, I started making my way back to the village, only to find that the path looked unfamiliar. The dense trees enveloped me, turning the once familiar surroundings into a suffocating maze. The phone call came back, sounding even louder now, as if a chilling cry for assistance reverberating among the trees. I started running again, desperate to find the way out. The call persisted at every moment. I tripped over a root and fell hard to the ground. As I tried to get up, I felt something cold touching me. When I looked up, I saw it clearly. It was a man, or something resembling a man. His eyes were white and opaque, without irises or pupils, just two empty holes. His skin was pale, almost translucent, with dark veins visible. Wearing ragged garments, looking like they hadn't been changed in years. His facial expression showed a combination of desperation and rage, as if he were stuck in never-ending suffering. He opened his mouth and I heard clearly, "Help me." That sound froze me with fear, as if he wanted me to come closer to him. I screamed, a scream of pure terror, and the figure vanished. I managed to get up and ran back to the village. Once I emerged from the woods, the sun was high and the fog was gone. People were beginning to come out of their houses, looking at me with curiosity and wonder. I told them what had happened, but it seemed no one believed me. To them, I was just tired and disoriented, but I knew. Something in that forest was alive, something ancient and malevolent. In the days that followed, I tried to avoid the forest. The village seemed indifferent, continuing with its daily routine, but I knew something had changed. Something dark was lurking. But it never appeared again. I wonder if it is still there or not. Please like and subscribe if you are enjoying. I'm going to share a fascinating experience I had a few years back when I chose to abandon urban life and relocate to a rural village in England. The peace and harmony with nature were just what I required to heal from my recent divorce during that period. I leased a house which was old but charming, located at the end of a dirt road. The stunning green hills and wheat fields surrounding the area were absolutely beautiful. They had a vibrant beauty. In the village, all the residents were familiar with each other, and eventually, I also gained recognition. There was a feeling of unity that was new to me. While browsing at the nearby market, I encountered Mrs. Sanderson, a kind, elderly woman. While talking, I mentioned my love for hiking, and she informed me about a path that goes to a partially concealed lake in the woods. "It's a magical place, dear, perfect for reflecting and finding peace," she said with a smile that seemed to carry decades of stories. That Saturday, I grabbed my backpack, packed a snack and a water bottle, and set off towards the trail excited. The beginning was easy, a wide and well-marked path, surrounded by tall and beautiful trees. The smell of earth and leaves was comforting, almost like a nature's hug. I walked for about an hour, enjoying the tranquility and the birdsong. The trail began to narrow, and the forest became denser. It was then that I noticed something strange. The trees there seemed older, the branches twisted and covered in moss, like deformed hands reaching for the sky. It was beautiful, nonetheless. I kept walking, feeling a chill that didn't come from the weather. That location gave off a disturbing energy. I believed I heard footsteps approaching from behind, however. Whenever I looked back, the only presence I found was the wind. I finally found the lake, tiny and surrounded by tall grass, with still and dark water. The setting appeared calm, yet an unsettling feeling lingered. The complete silence made it seem like the location was pausing, with no noise at all, not even a breeze. I perched on a boulder near the pond, looking at my surroundings. I began snacking, but my mind remained restless and wouldn't cease its thoughts. At that moment, I noticed a shadow on the other side of the lake. The figure appeared human, but their posture seemed off, like they were leaning too much forward, which startled me. What could that possibly be? I rose to my feet gradually, already filled with fear. The shape also shifted, imitating my actions, capturing my interest. As the sun began to go down, the faint glow cast shadows that distorted my sight and began to fill me with fear. I saw the figure approach me, and it was then that I realized their eyes were glowing, not from sunlight, but from something more sinister. I didn't linger to learn further details. I took my backpack and hastened my pace along the trail, nearly breaking into a run. The feeling of being followed returned more intense. I could hear fast steps behind me, the sound of branches breaking under the weight of something or someone, so I sped up. I arrived in the village at dusk, sweating and out of breath. I ran straight to my house and locked the door. My mind tried to find a rational explanation, but nothing made sense. I spent the night awake, listening to every little sound, every creak of wood, hoping that presence hadn't followed me. The next day, when I met Mrs. Sanderson, I hesitated to tell her what had happened. Instead, I just thanked her for the tip and asked if she knew another trail, maybe a less isolated one. She looked at me curiously but didn't ask any questions. "Of course, dear. There's a shorter trail near the eastern hill. Maybe you'll like that one better." Since then, I've been avoiding the forest and the trails. Life in the village has never been the same, and sometime later I decided to move and return to the big city. And occasionally, when I'm by myself at home, I experience that identical shiver. I am unsure about what I witnessed at that lake, and I may never find out, but I am certain it was true. I have always been told that beginning a new job is an unparalleled experience, feeling a combination of excitement and nervousness, attempting to present oneself well, and adjusting to the surroundings. No one had warned me about what I would encounter on my initial day in that office. I got there promptly at 8 in the morning. The building, quite old, had 4 floors and was located in the city center, boasting classic charm, wooden floors, and more. The receptionist, a woman who was extremely friendly, greeted me using my name and showed me to my new cubicle on the 3rd level. While organizing my belongings, I started to detect a strange scent in the atmosphere. The odor of stale coffee and the musty atmosphere weren't the cause. It felt like a sensation, a gentle pressure in my ears, as though the air was thicker than usual. My boss was amiable, yet consistently appeared wary, as though anticipating someone's arrival. The other team members appeared welcoming as well. However, I sensed an unknown tension in the atmosphere which may have been due to my unfamiliarity with the environment. On my initial day, I was presented with an aged project known as the Brown File, a collection of aged and discolored papers that nobody dared to handle. My task was to organize and digitize everything. It seemed boring, but I thought it would be a good way to integrate myself. I spent the whole morning flipping through papers and documents without any problem, but when lunchtime came, I noticed that no one ate in the office. Everyone went out to lunch. I found that strange, but decided to follow their lead. When I returned from lunch, something had changed. The air was heavier, and I felt a slight chill. I believed it was only the air conditioning of the old building, but as I dealt with the documents more, that feeling of unease grew. That's when I came across a 1984 report detailing a series of unexplained incidents that occurred at the structure. Unexplained deaths, disappearances, incidents hidden by the organization. I was confused by what I was seeing. I looked around and everyone seemed to be focused on their tasks. I asked my boss about the report, but he dismissed it as old rumors and suggested I not worry about it. But it was hard to ignore when the dates coincided with the renovations done in the building. As the days went by, things only got worse. Weird noises in the hallways, footsteps when I knew I was alone. The team members started to avoid me, as if they knew something I didn't. One evening, I remained at work until a late hour to complete a set of scans. I was the only person in the office when I caught a whisper coming from the hallway. I felt my heart beating fast, but I believed it was just in my mind, until I heard it once more, but with increased volume. I rose from my bed and made my way to the door, glancing down the deserted hallway. The light blinked, revealing a shadow swiftly moving in the background. I made the decision to head back to my house. I took hold of my bag and proceeded towards the elevator. However, upon the door's opening, the elevator mirror displayed a person standing behind me that I couldn't see. There was nothing there when I turned swiftly. The following day, I informed a co-worker at the workplace about the incident. With a look of pity, she asked me, "You saw that, right? We've all seen it. That is the reason why nobody remains here past 6. She spoke in a tone filled with fear. The company concealed the real deaths and disappearances to prevent scandals, even though they actually occurred. I will resign by the end of the month. I have not returned there. What troubles me is the thought of someone vanishing and the apparent lack of concern shown, with new employees being brought in who are completely unaware of the situation. I only wish they don't have to discover the difficult way like I did." I have always been skeptical of horror stories, to refrain from speaking and from hearing. I always believed that these things were created to promote the sales of books and movies. However, the events from 2 years ago caused me to reconsider all of those beliefs. I worked as a truck driver, driving on desolate roads that slice through the heart of the United States. Late at night, and tiredness was beginning to overwhelm me. The never-ending road was accompanied only by the peaceful quiet of the nighttime. The night was radiant and visible, shining in the soft light of a complete moon. I was delivering medical supplies to a faraway hospital. The task was easy, yet lonely, and that was the moment when things began to take a strange turn. I stopped at a gas station to refill the tank and rest. During the time I was refueling, a man approached me. He inquired about my destination, and I promptly responded. The man appeared to have come from a horror film, dressed in tattered clothes and eyes that looked weary of it all. He informed me about a different route that would make my journey through the woods shorter. He warned me to be cautious of what I might come across, despite the time and fuel I could save. Curious and a little suspicious, I decided to follow his advice. I entered the road that cut through the dense forest. As I advanced, I began to feel like I was being watched by something in the forest. It was an uncomfortable feeling, as if something was watching me, so I was careful to look around as I drove. Visibility became poor as the fog started to envelop the truck. The headlights provided little illumination for the road ahead. That's when I noticed an unusual sound. a scraping noise on the truck's exterior that continued briefly. I believed it might be a part of a tree. Therefore, I made the choice to pull over the truck in order to investigate the situation. I took my small flashlight and walked out carefully. It was at that moment that I realized something that scared me. There were deep, fresh scratches on the side of the truck, looking like huge claws. They couldn't have been caused by branches alone. Fear began to take over as I looked around, trying to see any movement in the brush around me. It was then that I heard a low, guttural sound coming from the nearby trees. Paralyzed by fear, I aimed the flashlight in the direction of the sound and saw a strange thing moving quickly between the shadows. It looked like an ugly and indistinct animal. It was tall, with long, thin legs like those of a deer, but its posture and movements were completely unnatural. Its eyes gleamed with a yellow reflection in the light of the flashlight, fixed on me. I knew at that moment that I wasn't dealing with something normal. I remembered all the skinwalker stories I had ever heard in my life, and I was almost certain that this could be one. Without thinking twice, I hurriedly ran back to the truck and drove as fast as I could down the road, looking in the rearview mirror the entire time. Fear and relief mixed as I left the forest behind. I never went back on those roads, but the marks on the side of the truck are still there. I took some photos, as a reminder of what lurks on those roads. Since then, I have never been the same. That experience changed something within me, something that now makes me more careful whenever I am driving at night. I remember that strange figure and its legs that seemed to belong to something much more sinister than a simple forest animal. I continue driving, night after night, with the feeling that I am never truly alone. Now I carry a machete next to my driver's seat, and whenever I need to go out of the truck at night, I take it with me as a precaution. To be clear, this incident occurred around 1 year in the past. After driving a truck on the road for approximately 2 years, I became accustomed to the extended hours and isolation of being in the driver's seat. However, the occurrences of that evening were completely unfamiliar to me, unlike any previous experiences. I was on a delivery trip from New Mexico to Denver, Colorado. The stretch was very long, so I had to drive at night too. Around 2 a.m., I decided to make a quick stop in Trinidad, a city in southern Colorado, for coffee and food. I had to stay awake. There was no choice. I entered a 24-hour diner adorned with vintage pictures and a jukebox tucked away in one corner. The establishment was nearly deserted, with only an old waitress and a man at the rear of the room, his head propped on the table. I requested a coffee and a sandwich in an attempt to stay awake. While I was waiting, I started to feel increasingly uneasy, a feeling that something was not right. I glanced around and observed the man at the rear gazing in my direction. His eyes were deeply sunken, suggesting he had not had any sleep for days. I felt uncomfortable because of his intense stare. I chose to overlook it, grabbed my purchase, paid, and returned to my truck. While I was driving, an odd sensation continued. The street was empty, lit only by my truck. A car was trailing me after traveling a short distance. The sedan was old and blue in color. I attempted to avoid dwelling on it, but the vehicle continued to tail me, consistently maintaining the distance. As every minute went by, my anxiety intensified. I chose to pull over at a close rest stop to check if the car was still behind me. After I parked, the sedan drove by me and kept going. I relief, yet my intuition warned me that I was still not out of danger. There was nobody at the rest area. I exited the truck to extend my legs and smoke a cigarette. That was the moment I caught the sound of footsteps approaching from the nearby bushes. I swiftly looked back, but found nothing. I made the choice to hit the road again, so I tossed the cigarette and departed. Upon getting back into the truck and closing the door, I noticed a sound emanating from the back of the vehicle. I took a quick look in the mirror behind me and saw a moving shadow. I became frightened. I secured all the doors, initiated the engine, and proceeded to the nearest gas station, located approximately 30 minutes from my current location. As I drove, the shadow continued to move behind me, and I didn't know what it could be. Fear took over me. and I started thinking the worst. When I finally saw the gas station, I parked the truck near the gas pumps, but decided not to get out. Instead, I called the local police, reporting that there was something or someone in my truck. The police arrived quickly. When they opened the back of the truck, what they found left me speechless. It was the coffee shop man. He was there, huddled in the corner, with a very strange expression. The police removed him and arrested him. There was no resistance. He simply accepted being taken. Afterwards, I discovered that the man was a fugitive being sought for committing murder. He had murdered multiple individuals and was attempting to evade law enforcement. The fact that he could have taken my life that night continues to trouble me even now. The path is both isolated and risky, with unforeseen dangers lurking ahead. Ever since that evening, I remain vigilant, avoid lingering in unfamiliar locations, and constantly watch out for any potential threats. The path may be unforgiving, but you must always be ready for any challenge. From that point on, I always have a weapon on me. Thank you for watching until the end. Like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.